Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning. Alrighty, guys. When you do get in here, I would love to know where you are joining us from. We usually have quite a mix of people from around the world. I'll just give everyone a sec to get in. Canada, Chinchilla, Sydney, US. Love it. New Zealand, UK. Good old mix. New Zealand, Adelaide, South Coast, New South Wales. Wonderful. Kingaroy. Oh, Lake County, Canada, Sydney, Palm Cove, Nashville. Love. I loved Nashville when I was there recently. I really want to set up our first homeopathic healing for homeopathic center for healing with the remedy one. I was looking at Franklin in Tennessee, and it was outrageously gorgeous. Bateman's Bay, oh, awesome. Melbourne, Grafton, Sydney. Awesome. All right. Welcome, everybody. Andrew said Franklin would be perfect. It's so stunning. I was like, do people even live here? It's just so gorgeous. All right. I have my chocolate kit ready. Now, we are recording a first aid Zoom webinar today, guys, to go through the basics. So I don't know what level of understanding you are joining me with, whether you're a complete novice. That is the way I'm going to act when I'm going through these slides so that people understand the power of homeopathy, why it's so important that we all get familiar with homeopathy, how to utilize it in our homes, for our families, for ourselves, and what it means to really raise children with homeopathy. You save a lot of suppression and a lot of chronic disease down the line. So, as a homeopath, I take cases, I take a lot of complex cases every day. Currently, I oversee thousands of them. And, things like eczema, asthma, hay fever, allergies, tonsillitis, endometriosis, like literally everything you could think of, we address with homeopathy. But something that you will see an absolute pattern with is that those who are raised holistically, who are largely using not harmful and not suppressive medications to look after their acute things at home. So think fevers, flus. You guys might have seen, the big hype of what's come out of the US recently in regards to the implications of using Tylenol in pregnancy and how that can affect people cognitively. They are looking at autism and ADHD implications from using something as simple as Tylenol. Now, that is not the only factor that plays into it, but I think the point of that is that we need to start to realize what we put in our bodies really does matter for our cognitive function. There is a reason that chronic disease is absolutely rife throughout the world at the moment. And if we are honest with ourselves and we look around the world, the great majority are struggling with chronic disease, even down to, anxiety, depression. And yes, this constantly at the moment, you'll find people are being diagnosed with ADHD. And the homeopath views it quite differently to the medical model. So, anyway, let's get into our work here. True empowerment is knowing you have the tools and the wisdom to navigate life's challenges. Equipping yourselves with homeopathy in the home is honestly one of the wisest things that you can do. And we don't want to be on the back foot, right? So, in the midst of your child having a raging fever and not having anything on hand, what we want to do is be prepared with the knowledge and the tools to get through them easily. So, what is homeopathy? We work with the vital force. It is an energetic system of medicine. I often liken it to, say, acupuncture. For any of you who have had acupuncture, you know that we put the needles in to stimulate the flow of energy throughout the body. They call it chi. The homeopath calls it the vital force. It doesn't matter what you call it, it is the same intelligent, wise force that knit you together in your mother's womb. When you think about it, isn't it remarkable that we get pregnant and with no conscious effort from us, our vital force knows what to do. It knows how to knit together a baby's eyelids, its eyelashes, its spinal cords, its ears that work. The vital force is very, very intelligent, but it is an energetic blueprint. That is what we inherit coming down our family lines. So say, for example, my sister Ash, she was born with a little hole in her neck and she needed surgery just after she was born, a little sinus there. And the doctors said, it's not genetic, no reason to think that there's no correlation. It's just a random thing that happens. So funnily enough, my sister gave birth, 3 years ago, and her daughter had the same little hole in the neck. Now, what is happening there? Mainstream would usually call these sorts of things genetics, right? Your inheritance. The homeopath said it's the energetics. It's that my sister's body was helping, and it contributed that egg. So it had half of the energetic blueprint for how it was going to knit this child together. So the homeopath is looking at the blueprint that comes down family lines. Now, this is why we would say that there are definitely correlations between if your parents had asthma, eczema, hay fever, allergies, you are much more likely to have it. There are some holistic practitioners out there, and I find it a little bit limiting in their view, I guess, of health, that they would think if you just eat well and you exercise, you drink clean water and you get good sun, that's all there is to it. You'll be healthy. And as a homeopath, I can say that is simply not the case. People inherit strong energetics coming down family lines, and sometimes it takes only frequency medicine must be used to push that vital force back into alignment, to get rid of the anxiety, depression. Eating well, doing all of those lifestyle foundational basics, they are important, but they are not the entire picture. Energy does matter. So we have a system of medicine here in homeopathy where they figured out that you can take from nature each of these individual little substances, whether you take it from a herb, a plant, whether you take it from an animal source or a mineral like sulfur, or other things that are known as poisons, things like arsenic, you can make them into a medicine. So Paracelsus famously used to say, the difference between, perhaps a medicine and a cure is in the dose. And in homeopathy, we have found that to be true, that the most minute, diluted, so they make it in a pharmacy. So they bring in the constituent. Let's say we are making arsenicum album. Now, this is a remedy that we use for gastro, IBS, diarrhea, anxiety that gets people worked up and restless. And we take arsenic in its crude element. We take it into the pharmacy and we dilute it in 1 part to 99, 1 in 100, down, dilute, succuss, dilute, succuss, dilute, succuss, until we are left with this bottle of arsenicum album. It is this vibrating frequency of arsenic. Now, because it has been diluted and succussed serially so many times, there is no active constituent of the actual poisonous arsenic, but all of the healing properties remain. Now, how do we find out what those healing properties are specifically for arsenic? Well, to the homeopath, we look straight in our literature. It is all recorded here. Predominantly medical doctors in the beginning were all the homeopaths, and they worked to get a lot of this, our literature put together. But you can see it in the principle of like cures like. If you ingest a spoonful of arsenic, the pure poison arsenic, what is going to happen to your body? You are going to have vomiting because it's poison and your body's so smart, it wants to get it out. So it will give you vomiting. It will give you diarrhea. It will give you stomach cramps like IBS. It will be very uncomfortable. You are likely to get very worked up. A lot of our arsenicum albums have a lot of health anxiety, a lot of fear of death. All of this stuff is what you would expect if somebody ingested a crude dose of arsenic. But homeopathically, this is where it becomes important. To energetically heal somebody who has gastro, who has severe health anxiety, chronic fear of death and health anxiety. I'm sure you guys know those people. I've worked with a lot of them. They're going to the doctor all the time. The hypochondriacs who can be restless and quite neurotic sometimes. That is what we use the homeopathic arsenicum album to heal. So when you go through your reference booklet and you find, all right, the number one leading remedy for gastro, vomiting and diarrhea is actually the energetic homeopathic medicine made from arsenic. this, I hope you can see, is the principle of like cures like. So, you know, when you look through and if you were to research each of the remedies in this kit, so we have our chocolate 30 kit here. If you research each of them, you're going to see the correlation between what they are in its crude element out in nature. So say, for example, apis, our bee sting. This remedy is made from the bee sting, and it contains all of that energy that you think when you get a bee sting on your arm, it goes swollen, it gets red, there's usually a bit of heat, stinging, pain. So what do we use our apis for? Swelling, you know, things like hives. My husband called once the boys, I don't know what it was, whether they were playing on the grass or something, they'd broken out in hives all over their body. Apis, and you just see that go down. We've had people who they've been to the doctor, they've had all of the, you know, Phenergans, antihistamines, and yet these hives reactions all over their body. Apis brings that down. It's sort of like the homeopathic anaphylactic, you know, remedy. There was a conference going on once in Australia, and I was told about this when I was at uni, but at a homeopathic conference, you best believe a lot of the homeopaths in the crowd, they keep a first aid kit on them in their bag. Now, somebody in the crowd had eaten nuts and they were anaphylactic to it. Now, of course, they called the paramedics immediately, but the homeopaths were giving apis to try and support the person. When the paramedics arrived, they were like, wow, you know, this is kind of crazy that they're still stable, but clearly in anaphylaxis. This is the power of apis. But you can see that correlation, can't you? Swelling, inflammation, and it comes from the bee sting. So you can see, it's not really a doctrine of signatures, but you can see the correlation, the resonance of how energy is operating and how we harness it as homeopaths from nature, and we use it to heal the human body. I always say, of course, you know, we are living here in this world. There are a lot of things that can make us sick. We will always need medicine. But homeopathy, I think, is God's gift to bring us back into alignment in a safe, gentle, and effective way that is not harmful long term. And it is not suppressive. It heals from the inside out. It gives your vital force that gentle, energetic stimulation, and your body heals itself. Your body has a remarkable capacity to heal, but sometimes it's just gotten so off track. It needs that vital stimulation. And that's where homeopathy comes in. It's like this beautiful, energetic reminder that when you ingest it, you take it under the tongue or you drink it in water, the vital force, your intelligent, free flowing energy throughout your body, it recognizes the frequency as this beautiful reminder. And it's like, boom, get back on track. Now, sometimes we have to give it a few stimulations, a few reminders. So we take multiple doses to push it back into alignment. But once we are there, we actually stay well. So this is another difference between homeopathy and things like herbs and supplements that people might want to take daily. For homeopathy, you only take it when you're out of balance. This is not a lifelong thing that you should be taking every day. You take homeopathy when you are really out of balance. You push that vital force back so that you feel well physically, mentally, emotionally, you're nice and in balance. And then we don't need to take the remedies anymore. All right, quick thing about the history, because I think it is important for people to know. It was discovered in the late 1700s. Dr. Samuel Hahnemann is the forefather of homeopathy, the founder, brilliant medical doctor, and he just grew disillusioned with the way that they were practicing medicine in the day. Now think too, 1700s when he was the doctor, they were doing things like bloodletting. They were doing crude doses of mercury. It was really heroic medicine. So these days, doctors would look at what they were doing in those days and say, what on earth? And to be honest with you, in another couple of hundred years, we are going to look at what the doctors are doing currently and we're going to say, what on earth were they thinking? Trying to force the body into submission with toxic chemicals that just have this flow on effect. And the thing, I'm sure a lot of you here joining me do understand this, but you cannot take a suppressive drug and it not have a roll-on effect in other systems of the body. We can't take anti-inflammatories, you know, for a swollen, rolled ankle and not impact other systems in the body, even just a little bit. So this is where homeopathy is so beautiful because it doesn't have these compounding toxic knock-on effects. So today, I don't know whether you guys realize this, homeopathy is considered the second largest system of medicine in the world, according to the World Health Organization. That is per how many people actually utilize homeopathy. The second largest in the world. That's bigger than Naturopathics, like herbs, that is bigger than obviously acupuncture, all of these ones that are really quite well known compared to homeopathy. Now, why are these stats so high? A lot of it, yes, in Europe, they do use homeopathy quite a bit, but India, I would say, is where the great number of stats come up because there are millions of people in India who only have access to homeopathic medicine. They don't have any pharmaceuticals at their disposal. So, this is where homeopathy is considered the second largest system of medicine in the world. Now, we go back 120 years, around the year 1900, the United States alone had over 100 homeopathic hospitals. And a lot of these were big hospitals. They weren't sort of like a little Ponzi clinic with, a couple of practitioners. Some of these had tens more, maybe hundreds of homeopaths in there serving the people who were coming. All of these hospital beds, they would come and stay and be looked after homeopathically. So it was really, really phenomenal. And where I would say homeopathy really rose to fame is throughout the epidemics of the day. So think scarlet fever, cholera, Spanish flu. Now, whatever your belief is around the origination of why these disease states all broke out, there is no doubt that people were very sick at those times. Now, you have these allopathic hospitals and you had the homeopathic hospitals that were functioning and they were treating people very differently. And when you look back at the stats, and if you guys wanted to look at this, you can look at Weston A. Price. I'll just type it here in the chat for you. Weston A. Price, who is a really phenomenal organization. They have an article written about the history of homeopathy in epidemics. When you read through that, you see the literal stats of how many people died in the homeopathic hospital when they were treated homeopathically with, say, belladonna for scarlet fever, versus at the exact same time, how many people were dying in the allopathic hospital. And they compare the mortality rates, and it is outrageously different in favor of homeopathy, extremely low. Compared to sometimes up to, over 20% mortality in the other hospitals. So those figures are all there for the world to see. So it is not surprising that homeopathy became so famous. And there are some books written and they have the little articles in there about the homeopaths who were working. People knew where the homeopaths lived in those days. And when the outbreaks were, at their peak, sometimes there would be lines around the block for people waiting to see the homeopath and get their hands on what they called the genus epidemicus, the remedy that would protect them from what was flowing through and why people were getting so sick. So we had over 1,000 homeopathic pharmacies. This is in the US alone. And there were over 22 homeopathic medical schools. Some of these were big, renowned medical schools that still operate today. They were teaching homeopathy. Remembering, guys, that back then, the great majority of homeopaths, they were people who had left being a medical physician. They had found something they believed to be better. And then they became homeopaths. They said, why would I practice in this old way now that I've found this? It's my honest opinion that in the next, definitely the next 100 years, but goodness gracious, I hope that it comes quicker than that, that in the next 10 years even, people are going to realize that homeopathy is what we have been missing. We cannot drug our way to health. We cannot surgery our way to health. They are brilliant modalities. The allopathic, the conventional, the mainstream medical system, it is good in emergencies, and that's where it needs to stay as an emergency, last resort trauma, modality. It is not helpful in the great majority of chronic health issues that people are facing today, anxiety, depression, all of the fertility issues, etc. People need their bodies to heal themselves. All right. So no doubt you guys realize homeopathy is currently going through the great resurgence. I think that we're at the tail end, where people think antibiotics are this like most beautiful thing and steroids. It's like we are finally seeing the downfall of all these medical interventions. Now people are desperately looking for what is the solution, because we will always need medicine. So the British royal family, including the late Queen Elizabeth II, she has always loved homeopathy. The royal family have always had their own private homeopaths. She, in fact, Queen Elizabeth II, would never travel without her homeopathic first aid kit. Now, she believes that allium cepa, which is one of the remedies in our first aid kit, she believes that it completely cured her hay fever. It is a big hay fever remedy. And that's what she says cured her lifelong hay fever. So on top of that, J.D. Rockefeller, who most would consider to be the father of modern medicine, conventional medicine, he himself had his own homeopaths that looked after the Rockefeller family. They had 3 private homeopaths that served the Rockefeller family. Now, despite him loving homeopathy, and he famously said, Rockefeller, homeopathy is a progressive and aggressive step in medicine. So he loved it right up until the moment he probably realized just how much money he could make on petrochemical pharmaceutical drugs. And so then his support swung a little bit, as you can imagine. So let's get into it. We have a range of first aid kits, and they might suit people at different times of their life. Now, this 30 remedy kit is sort of the at-home sort of essentials. There's also the 20 remedy timber kit that you can see in the photo there. They cover the core basics of what you would want in your home. You can also see featured there the Mama and Mini kit. We've got a few different travel blends depending on what people want, and we've got a few individual ones that we sell. Also, guys, I would say, yes, these kits are absolutely stunning. Yes, they are. I love them. I love using them. And yes, they last a very long time. But for people who are financially, struggling, and it's an investment, this medicine, it's an investment for your home. If you are struggling and you really want homeopathy in your home, but you just can't afford one of these kits, get any kit. There are some brilliant little pilule ones. They might not be as pretty. They might be a bit more basic. But you can get great ones online. Homeopathy is homeopathy. Use what works. All right. The reference booklet. Now, this comes with every kit, and you first want to, when you go through, give it a good read. We've got the dosing summary table, the list of contents. Now, we have arranged the reference booklet per ailment, not by remedy, because in the midst of, for example, your child has tonsillitis, you don't want to be reading through every remedy profile and seeing what works. You want to go to the page for tonsillitis, which I'll go to now. What page is it on? Page 9. So you want to go to that page and see what are the best homeopathic remedies in this kit for tonsillitis. So then you are going to read through the remedies listed there, and then you're going to go to your kit. So the first job for you is look at the symptoms of the patient, and then you are trying to find the remedy in the reference booklet which most closely fits the symptoms that they're experiencing. Now, it doesn't need to be bang on perfect, but it needs to be as close as possible. This is the like cures like element. We need the resonance of the remedy to match the resonance of the vital force of whoever is sick. And that is when the stimulation will work to heal their body. If we pick a random remedy that has nothing to do with tonsillitis, let's say we're starting to give allium cepa for tonsillitis, it's not going to find any energetic resonance with the vital force, and nothing will happen. So this is where we need to do our best work, our medical detective work, trying to see, okay, what are the symptoms? What color is the mucus? With your tonsillitis, is your throat burning? How do you feel? Do you feel restless? Do you feel relaxed? What's going on? So you're really looking at them in their totality. So then we select the best fitting remedy. Now we are going to administer a dose to stimulate the healing. Now, these remedies, it's good to know that because they are working on the energetic sphere, they are not going to be contraindicated by any medications that you are taking for a first aid situation. So let's say, let's say you do decide that you are going to give antibiotics. I know a lot of you are buying these kits because you would rather avoid pharmaceuticals, but let's say you reach some sort of critical point with your child and you're saying, all right, I think I actually do need to get some other medicine as well. You'd like to. You can absolutely do both at the same time. Whereas other natural modalities like naturopathics, for example, those herbs and those supplements, if you're superdosing them, they can actually have impacts on the liver where you do not want to be using something like Panadol alongside or Tylenol alongside a herb or supplement because they can contraindicate. Homeopathy is very safe in this regard because it is the energetics, it's your vital force that it's stimulating. It will not overwhelm your detox organs. It will be fine. So that's a good thing to note. You can use it alongside anything else that you are using. Now, with how frequently should we be giving our doses? It needs to match the intensity of what they are going through. Now, unlike, conventional medicine, say with Panadol, where it's very legalistic sort of rules, right? You only want to take, this much Panadol every 4 hours. Otherwise, it can be severely toxic. With homeopathy, there's no set rules of like, you have to do this every 4 hours. You really get to feel into it. And it's a lot harder to make a mistake in homeopathy. I don't really see people making mistakes with using homeopathy at home. And let's go into how your dosing might look. Now, if it's an intense condition, a fever, a burn, something that's really full on, you will dose frequently, perhaps every 15 minutes, perhaps every hour. So until those symptoms start to abate and calm down, you can really see that they're being supported through it. For more moderate conditions, every 4 hours is a good rule of thumb. So, say for example, let's say the postpartum situation, and we are wanting to stimulate healing postpartum. We might give arnica to support that, soft tissue healing and heal from the trauma and bruising and all of that. We might give arnica every hour or so. We might just put it in mum's water bottle and she can just sip and her body will get that natural triggered healing there with the arnica. Arnica, probably a lot of you know, it's one of the most famous homeopathic remedies. And I saw a study once where they were comparing tissue under the petri dish and they were looking at the human tissue that had been exposed to homeopathic arnica and the one that hadn't. And the amount of platelets and healing white blood cells, everything that was happening under the arnica petri dish, it was much quicker healing processes. So it really is observable, under the microscope. So you might give arnica every hour or so, just taking that sip. But maybe mum postpartum, she's feeling like a little bit off. She's feeling a little bit anxious. She can't really sleep that well and she's just not really feeling herself. She's finding herself when Bub goes to sleep, she's just watching the Bub and her nervous system is feeling a little bit worked up. You can see that this isn't so intense and she might dose, maybe once a day with a remedy just to support her nervous system. She might dose twice a day, with a remedy like cocculus, or an anxiety blend or something, just to like really calm her down. So it's about the intensity. Now, if, for example, someone has a really intense, yes, burn, something that's really stinging, it's really hurting, like they're really uncomfortable, you're going to dose very quickly back to back because you want results quickly to push their vital force back into alignment. So you get to really feel into that. How frequently should I be dosing? I want to say here quickly with some of these symptoms, a fever, for example, it is a good healing response of your body. The idea of homeopathic medicine is not to override the intelligence of your body. Because think about it, guys. Why do we run a fever? Let me just see how many people are in here, by the way. 87. Awesome. Why do we run a fever? The body is getting warmer to try and fire up to protect you, to burn off some of these other pathogens so that it is inhospitable for things in your body that we don't want. A fever is a beautiful healing response. What does homeopathy do then? Why do we even take a remedy in a fever? Now, a lot of the times I will not touch it in my children. I just leave them be. I'm a pretty hands-off mum. I got 3 young boys and, I don't treat them for everything and anything. But you will have some children who, when they are running a fever, they are profoundly uncomfortable. Maybe their head's throbbing, their pupils are dilated, their face is all flushed. Some kids, they even start to hallucinate. They can be really out of sorts with the high fever. And so the parents there, they're like, oh, I don't really want to give them Panadol and get rid of the fever, but I really do want to support them. And they find they give a remedy like aconite or belladonna, and what happens? They watch their child peacefully calm down and often just fall off to sleep. Now, will they still stay warm? Majority of the time, yes. Sometimes you will find that it does drop a little bit, but a lot of the time the body will maintain the higher temp, but you can see that the child is completely comfortable with it and will often sleep, which is just a beautiful, natural healing, sort of response. Say with a gastro, a lot of people, when they actually have these gastro-like symptoms, right, vomiting and diarrhea, A lot of the times it is a toxin that has come into the body. They might have food poisoning, you've eaten something. So if you go to the doctor and they give you a medicine to stop you vomiting and to stop the diarrhea, just to clog up both ways, you can see that that is not a advantageous thing to do, because you then have got the toxins swelling in the gut. And this is how we end up with more long-term gut issues. Your body was so intelligently trying to get it up and out. And so when you consider that taking the homeopathic remedy arsenicum album, what is a common response to that when it's given to people with gastro or food poisoning? What parents often message me is, oh my goodness, I gave the arsenicum album. Within a couple of minutes, they did the biggest power chuck I have ever seen in my life, just forceful up and out. And then they were completely back to normal. Oh my goodness. Before that, they had, cramping pain, nausea, and all of this. It was really dragging on. The remedy, the energetic resonance of the arsenicum album gave their vital force, that vital energy to up and out. They got rid of all of it. And then they're running around playing again and they're fine. Can you see the difference of this healing response when you go to the doctor versus you go to the homeopath? We are trying to intelligently support your body in what it needs to do to reinstate health. Very different approaches. We are not trying to dampen down the fever. We are not trying to plug up the body when it's trying to vitally express things. And the same thing goes for mucus. And a cough. A cough is a healing reflex because the body has flagged there is something in the lungs that we need to get out. You go and take a cough syrup that gets rid of your cough reflex. Well, what then? Do you know what I mean? We might have toxins in the lung that lead to something more disastrous like pneumonia. Next minute, they'll tell you, oh, now you need antibiotics because your body couldn't get it out. Homeopathy works with your own divine intelligence. Your body knows how to heal. We just have to support that process. So I hope we've got all of that. Now, as your condition starts to improve when you start dosing, you can then slow down with the rapidness of your dosing. You might just, do once a day if it's really starting to calm down, and you might stop altogether if you're like, oh, it's back into alignment. All good. I can just leave that to the side now. Now, if you find yourself forgetting to take the remedy, that's obviously a good sign that the symptoms have abated and you just don't need it anymore. But what happens if you're taking your remedy and the picture? Actually, I think it gets into that in a second. So I'll continue to go through. So with taking a dose, it is the same for infants, children, adults, and the elderly. It's not like, Panadol where you need to go, oh, much less for the baby than you do for the grown man. Homeopathy being an energetic stimulation, vital forces, they work the same for all of us. So we can, for infants, and children, I like to put your first aid remedies into water. I find this is a beautiful way for ease of dosing, keeps people hydrated, and it also makes your remedies go so far because you are only putting, a couple of drops into your water bottle and then you are dosing from that. Now, how does this whole process work? Now, this is your stock bottle. These are your pure homeopathic frequency. When you take a dose directly under the tongue from the bottle, it is going to work the same as if you put 2 drops of this into your water bottle with 500 mils and you shake it and then you take some sips from that. The frequency transmutes across the water and it changes the molecular structure of that water, and your body receives that water dose as if you took it directly from the bottle. I know that is hard to get our minds around, but it is true. If any of you are familiar with the work of Veda Austin, she's a Kiwi and New Zealander, and she has looked under the microscope. She's flash frozen and gotten all the photography for what homeopathic remedies do to the water when you then flash freeze it. And it's beautiful to see completely different molecular structures from aconite to arnica. These are all very unique frequencies, right, that are harnessed from nature. So naturally, when they go into the water, they completely change the molecular structure of that water. And when you ingest it, it is like you are taking that remedy directly. Now, is there any problem with taking a dose from the bottle? People say, oh, sometimes it's just easier than putting it in water. Totally agree. And yes, it is absolutely fine. However, you just want to be mindful that if you are always dosing directly from your stock bottle, and let's say you're doing that 6 times a day when you are sick, you are, of course, going to chew through your stock a little bit quicker. So just keep that in mind. But a lot of parents, they will put it in their child's water bottle if they've got a cold, if they've got like a lot of, mucus coming out or something. They might just put it in their water bottle and let that be their water bottle through the day. Whenever they want to sip, it'll give their body that gentle healing stimulation. So when it is an infant, we don't want the taste of brandy because, it's an infant and even some adults don't like the taste of brandy. So you could put one little drop, a tiny little shot glass, get some filtered water there and just get a little syringe dropper and straight into the bub's mouth. Now, it's important to note, it's not about how much you take. If you take 10 drops straight from the stock bottle, it will have the same effect as doing just one. Why is that? Because it's about the frequency ingested. It's the number of doses that you take, not the amount. So 10 drops at once will have the same stimulation to your vital force as just one drop. So be mindful of that you don't need a whole lot. However, what would happen then if we took those 10 drops, but they were spaced out by 10 minutes and you did another dose and another dose, and that 10 doses, that is going to have a much more powerful effect than if someone took 10 drops at once. It's about the frequency of dosing. Every dose, whether it's by the water, every sip of the water is going to be an energetic dose. Does that make sense to everyone? So if you were to scull that whole bottle, it really is only acting like one dose because your body is going to receive that frequency stimulation pretty much once. So just little sips or little doses is ideal. Now for our bubbers, same. Use the syringe into the mouth, let their vital force heal. If they're going through something really intense, you might repeat that 10, 15 minutes later. If it's something that's a bit more, relaxed, a bit more moderate, you might just do that little syringe in once a day. Support, their body, whatever it is. So, all right, and we've got some instructions there. I do say to make up a fresh bottle, if you've got water, to make up a fresh bottle daily. But I will say to you that I had a meeting with a homeopathic pharmacist for our RMDY Academy about 6 months ago. And he said, oh, you can leave it in water. That'll last, honestly, that's fine, up to like 4 or 5 days, to be honest, beyond that. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. So there you have it, guys. I often say just make up a fresh bottle because kids, I don't know about your kids, backwash, like germy. I just like to make up a fresh bottle with a couple of drops each day. But you guys, if you do leave it in the fridge, it will actually remain active for 4 or 5 days beyond. All right. Now, we do need to mix our remedies with water. There is something beautiful about water, the consciousness of water. It has an intelligence that holds the frequency of these remedies, unlike any other material. So breast milk, unfortunately, doesn't maintain the remedy integrity. Juice, cups of tea or coffee, please put your remedies in water. It's the best conduit that your body receives. And think about it, guys. We are made up of, what do they say? I don't even know what percent they say, water currently. And there is consciousness in water. There is memory in water. This will be the forefront of science, I'm sure, in the next 50 years. But water is magic, and it is the best conduit for us to use homeopathy to relay the message throughout the body of what we need to get done, what healing needs to happen, and water is the one. So please use that. Now, with shaking the remedy prior, it's a bit of an activation. We call it succussion in homeopathy. So I often say to my patients, if they're taking remedies chronically, I definitely say, give the bottle a good hard bang against the palm of your hand and then pour it into the bottle. Now, when you have put it in the water, I also say shake it again, get it really mixed up, get that frequency really put through that whole medium there of the water. So just to go through here, adults and children, you can sip straight from your water bottle. Children, you can syringe it into their mouth, or optional, you can just put the remedy directly under the tongue. All of these avenues will have the same effect on your vital force. It is a stimulation, no matter how different it looks. Okay, storing our remedies. We want them to be in a cool, dark place. Just keep, the lids on your kits. That will keep the sunlight away from it. Obviously, the amber bottles Amber bottles protect from sunlight as well, so that is ideal. But if you have them open and like on the windowsill, just be mindful of sunlight. We want to avoid strong electric or magnetic fields. Wi-Fi routers, modems, mobile phones, computers, microwaves, televisions. Don't store your remedies right next to any of these things. However, don't be overly paranoid about having your kit in the house if you do have Wi-Fi throughout the house. They are much more resilient, I think, than people realize. That homeopathic pharmacist that we had a lecture with recently, he's been using his same first aid kit. Oh, it's going to press my memory now. I don't know if he said 30 years, maybe less than that, but over 20 years, he's been using his same first aid kit. He takes it traveling with him everywhere. And even with the airport routers, not an issue. Not routers, airport security scanners, stuff like that. He is not concerned at all. Now, Remedy Collective, we do sell the Faraday bags. I don't know, because I like it. If you're trying to keep your kit for a very, very, very long time. Now, what do I mean by a very long time? Well, to say the homeopaths back in the day, they used to go house to house with this big briefcase of remedies. They dug up some of those and they were out of the sunlight, but they had their pilules in the little bottles there. And 50 years later, still active. So homeopathic remedies technically don't expire. The beauty of having this drippolator lid rather than, the dropper bottles that go in. Dropper bottles are, of course, quite convenient, but you also have a lot more potential to touch bacteria on that tip and put it back into your bottle. Whereas these, it's pretty hard for you guys to actually put bacteria into this bottle because it's protected by the drippolator. So, your remedies really last a very long time. Legally, the TGA asks us to put a 2-year expiry, but if you guys adhere to your good storage aspects, just know your homeopathic remedies do not technically expire years. They should be good. And you can always check them. Look, if there was any black or there was anything floating in there, you can assume that, if 10 years later something's got in there, look at that. But if they are clear, they are active. They go cloudy if they are not. So that's something you guys can always check. So don't store them in the bathroom or kitchen where the heat, steam, humidity might affect them. We want to keep the lids tightly closed. We don't want any alcohol evaporating, so just nice and closed there. Store away from strong smelling things. They say essential oils, perfumes, cleaning agents. That's for long-term storage. Going to be honest with you, I'm not overly paranoid about it. I've got like some essential oils in the house. I'm not a big user of them. I don't, but they are next to each other. No issues. These remedies are really powerful. But we're just thinking, if you're going to store them for 10 years, why not keep them isolated? Now, I want to touch quickly on, before I forget, the nature of these remedies in terms of potency. Now, the varying different remedies that you will get throughout the world, you will see some of them will say 30C. So let's use arnica as an example. Arnica 30C, arnica 6C, arnica 200C. These ones are Fibonacci homochords, which is, if you read on the back, this combines the 3, the 5, the 8C, 13C, 21, right up to 233C. So there's a lot of different potencies in here. Why do I do that? I love, these are called homochords, and it is a combination of the different frequencies. And they're all quite low ones, 233C and under. Now, after experimenting with these, I find their effects personally a bit superior than single potencies, because in homeopathy, you need to get a potency which is strong enough to stimulate the healing response. Now, generally with first aid prescribing, you're quite fine if you are using, you'll see a lot of the health food stores sell 6Cs, some 30Cs, and a lot of the online kits you'll get are 30C. Now, it just is the truth that different people resonate with different potencies. You see this very much so in your chronic prescribing when you're trying to heal people's eczema, asthma. You prescribe all different sorts of potencies for different people depending on their sort of individual nature. So what I find in the acute prescribing is that by combining these 10, I'm just covering off all my bases, and at the same time, they do not appear to be overwhelming to anybody's vital force. Powerful in stimulating the healing and yet not overwhelming. So I'll get into some examples of things that might come up. It's not to say, when I say that they're not overwhelming, it's not to say, for example, if you take the Staphysagria to heal your birth trauma in this kit, that you're not going to have a big response. You probably will, but it's not an aggravation. It is a truly supportive healing response. It is helping you get that anger out and move beyond it. So this is the aspect of potency that I just want you to understand why people have different numbers on their kits. But I will say, if you are just buying a kit online or you already own a homeopathic kit and it's 30C, I think that they are completely appropriate. If you're making your own kit, you know, for me as a homeopath, of course I'm going to make it as best as I absolutely can with all of my beliefs about what is best for the vital force. But people have been using 30C first aid kits for many years with great success. So please don't doubt the power of your single potency kits. They are brilliant. And this is just my opinion and my experience. So I get a lot of testimonies from people who use these kits in their home and what happens for them. And I find them so profound. And I've never had an issue with these potencies. So very grateful and always love hearing your testimonies when you guys do use them. That's a bit about the frequencies that they contain. Now, let's talk a little bit about acute versus chronic. What are we talking about when they're different? Now, an acute condition is usually short-lived and it has self-limiting conditions. So what that means is your fever, right? People get a fever and it doesn't last forever, it goes away. You might even have a bit of a flu, which is really just a big detox response predominantly. Now, they can be sudden onset, they can be through them within like 3 days. You have an intense gastrobug, it comes, it goes. That is acute. It's self-resolving on its own, usually without long-term medical help. So our aims in acute prescribing, we want quick relief and resolution. We want to support the body through there. But there are chronic issues as well, long-standing, deep-rooted, things like eczema. And it's not self-limiting, right? It doesn't just go away on its own. Your body needs help to actually kick it to the curb. They can be persistent or recurring patterns over months or years. Now, the remedy chosen must be for the whole person then. We need to match your entire energy. And it's aiming for long-term balance and transformation. So can you guys see the difference here? Now, what I want to outline is that some things might be acute, or they might look acute, but they're actually a chronic issue. So let's look at some examples. A headache. I would say that we all can get a headache, you know, I don't know, once a year or whenever it is. And you just have one. Maybe you're dehydrated. That's an acute headache. It's self-resolving. You'll get more hydrated. It's going to go away. Whereas some people get a chronic headache, which visits, let's say for women, they might say, I get a really bad headache or migraine every month just before my menstrual cycle. And what we would say then is this is a chronic issue, but you can have a headache that is really just an acute, right? So we need to be mindful when we are treating things with our kits at home that if the headache blend is not getting rid of your headache that comes every month, that's because your headache is actually a chronic, deeper rooted, underlying energetic distortion. And the first aid remedies might not touch it exactly where it needs to go. So what that means is you might need to see a homeopath and get a remedy to actually recalibrate your hormonal profile. This isn't a simple acute headache. However, I will say some people who do get those headaches, they will use the headache blend. And if you're lucky, one of the remedies in there will match your vital force enough that it will recalibrate everything, but sometimes it doesn't. And the same goes for, say, for example, hay fever and allergies. If you're having a little stir up, there's a chance that you, like the Queen of England, will resolve the issue with allium cepa alone. But if you find, oh gosh, yes, it gives me some relief in the moment, but then it comes back, you know, months later, it's always there and it's been going on for years. What this means, guys, is that there is a deeper distortion. And this might be even miasmatic, which is your generational inheritance. It might have come from your parents, that there is a deeper issue that needs recalibrating, in which case you might need a miasmatic nosode. You might need a polycrest, a well-indicated classical remedy. Now, for a homeopath to find that, it usually takes at least 60 to 90 minutes of sitting with you and saying, tell me everything. Tell me everything about you. You know, what foods you crave, what position you sleep in. Tell me what, you know, your grandparents passed away from, or what, you know, diseases your parents have ever been susceptible to. Is their thyroid out of balance? Do they get migraines? Do they have endometriosis? It's a whole medical detective element, right? And then you might be able to get rid of the hay fever using a different, deeper remedy. So just be mindful, use your kits. They will be phenomenal. But if you are trying to treat something that's chronic, bear in mind you might need the helping hand of a professional homeopath. Now, once you get to the root of them with that homeopath, they should not bother you in future. You know, we really want to recalibrate and heal completely. We want permanent, gentle, but complete restoration, permanent cure from our homeopathic treatment. That is absolutely the goal. And homeopaths, like the number of people who will come to us and like doctors say, oh, there's no cure for this. You know what I mean? There's nothing you can do for this endometriosis. The homeopath, because we work on the energetic blueprint. And I don't know how many of you guys realize, you know, I guess with the energy and the physics of things, but when we change energy, that is what precedes mass. So if you guys have ever seen that famous equation of Einstein's, and it's like E equals mc squared, you've got the energy on one side equals the mass on this side. Now, if you change the energetics of anything really in this world, in this universe, vibrationally, you actually change how mass comes into being. So when we look at something like endometriosis, we can stimulate the healing by changing that person's vital force. The way it goes on with that disease process in creating endometriosis is completely changed. But when you have something like endometriosis, which is, you know, the overgrowth of that endometrial tissue throughout, let's say, that uterine cavity, if we just go in for surgeries every year and the doctor cuts all of that extra tissue out, okay, and then the woman's cycles are not as painful, but what happens most often? It regrows. Why does it regrow? Why does cancer regrow so often when we get it, you know, removed? It's because we did not change the energetic blueprint. It was still wired to continue in exactly the same process. So if we don't change these underlying drivers, we're not going to be able to change the outcome, the physical manifestation of these diseases. So many of these physical symptoms are actually born out of the energetic, the mental and emotional, the deeper underlying subconscious patterns that people have going on. There's a lot of emerging science around this area, which is proving it, you know. And they say things like the body keeps the score, you know, traumas that you go through or things that you inherit down your family lines. This energy does dictate how your body and your mind largely functions, but you are in control of how to change that. Some people get stuck in some, you know, energetic patterns that can feel really negative. They can feel really anxious, right? And a really clear way to look at this, guys, how your mind affects your physical body. If you go to a medical doctor at the moment and you say, I've got severe IBS, you know, vomiting, even if it's just like diarrhea, cramping, pain, bloating every time I eat. A lot of doctors these days actually refer you to a psychologist because they know that a lot of it is stemming from your mind and your thoughts. And a lot of them, unfortunately, will recommend things like antidepressants and anxiety meds to try and get rid of your IBS symptoms. Whereas, you know, the homeopath, we give that energetic stimulation. It will get rid of your mental and emotional symptoms, and then your gut will heal because your body will actually feel safe. So it's all interlinked. Your mind, your body, your spirit, your mental and emotional state. You can't affect one without the other. And homeopathy treats all of them. That's why it's so powerful and gets such brilliant results. And just quickly, sorry guys, I'm just tangent, but there are things in this world that I would let you guys know that really contribute to disease processes the most. One is what we inherit down our family lines. No denying that the energetics you inherit at birth play into how your body functions a lot. but your mental and emotional state, and this includes the trauma that you have experienced throughout your life. If your parents divorced when you were really young and you were swapping between houses and your nervous system couldn't relax and there was lots of fighting and maybe someone's an alcoholic and things are volatile and you don't feel safe, I guarantee you that will manifest in physical or mental and emotional symptoms throughout your life. If you've experienced some sort of sexual abuse or violation, or you've had an intense birth trauma, physical symptoms will manifest from this. So we need to be mindful of, the traumas. The other thing is toxins, and a lot of people in the world are aware of this now. If you inject toxins into your bloodstream, this can have a really negative consequence. If we are taking a lot of pharmaceuticals, if we are a farming family that is spraying with glyphosate, I guarantee you it will impact the human body. So these are the three things that I would say to be mindful of. Your toxic exposure, for one, your mental and emotional sphere, your traumas, your vibration. How do you think about yourself? Do you wake up and love yourself, love your body? Are you grateful? These sorts of things. Or do you have subconsciously resentments and bitterness and unforgiveness and pain and hurt and fear? Fear crumbles our vital force. It really deteriorates the integrity of our body. These sorts of things you want to look at. And then, yeah, what you have inherited. Homeopathy can address all three, can detox powerfully, even if it is something like vaccinosis. Homeopaths are well equipped for people who have ailments after a vaccine. And it's all written about, and it has been for hundreds of years. We have been aware of the negative consequences. And when given the right homeopathic remedy, the healing results that come from that will blow your mind. And you'll think, my gosh, that medical intervention was over 10 years ago. How can giving the body this frequency actually trigger this profound healing response? And it does. It's obviously a controversial topic, but it is something that needs to be spoken about. There are risks with all medical interventions, and sometimes for people it goes wrong. And so, to give you one example, we were working with somebody in our academy. We were filming for our students, and we had a beautiful nurse from the US, and she had been really pressured. And it was after a flu vaccine that her body was breaking out in hives, head to toe. If she was to pick up a bag and place it on her shoulder, she would be broken out in the most painful red hives, even putting clothes on, doing anything. And this was persisting for months on months on months, might have even been years actually by the time we got to consult with her recently. And we gave her the prescription. Thuya is a remedy well known for vaccinosis. And on giving that, we have seen almost an 80% improvement so far of now she can touch the skin. She ripped off her jumper in the consult and showed us her beautiful clear skin, which she was so excited. But what's fascinating is that when she took the remedy, the site on her arm where she received that flu jab broke out in a big red anger. It was like pushing out. It was a big red lump there, and it remained for months. It's like the body remembered. So when we say things like the body keeps the score, it's really very intelligent. This field that makes up you, it remembers so much. And this is why when you take a well-indicated homeopathic remedy, more often in the classical, when you are seeing a homeopath, but you say, oh my gosh, last night I was dreaming about, my ex-boyfriend when I was 16 and he broke up with me out of the blue. And it was after that I actually developed all this anxiety. But yeah, I dreamt of him last night. And these things happen routinely on homeopathic remedies. People will take a remedy and they are bursting into tears. And this is energy. This is what it looks like to move energy and actually heal. You are unbuckling, I guess, all of these constraints that the vital force has been under, all the pain it's felt. And so we let things go. And when this is generational stuff, sometimes it's even more rocky and it can feel really painful, but we move it and then we end up in a much higher vibrational state, much transcended. So you will be mentally, emotionally, physically stronger, happier, healthier once you do this healing work. So we are really working with that vital force. All right, back to acute remedies. Aconite. And I'm just going to give you a little brief here, but I just sort of wanted to touch on some of them so that you understand just how incredible each and every remedy is in your kit. And you at liberty can go online. You can research the power of each of these. If you become fascinated, you could go on YouTube and just say, you want to look at videos for rust tox. What is rust tox used for? You'll have homeopaths on there doing lectures and you can learn all about it. So I just want to give you a little teaser here because it is so remarkable. Aconite, sudden onset after a fright, panic, shock, fevers from exposure. And so this is looking at often wind or weather elements. So where you think aconite, it's the suddenness, it's the intensity. It's often one of our first line remedies in an emergency or a panic-like situation. So that might look like with the aconite, and you'll see this all through your reference booklet, but say you go to bed and then you wake up suddenly in the middle of the night, your child has this raging fever and they're so out of sorts and it seems like this big panic, like, oh my gosh, it's so full on. Aconite is going to be your first thought. It's a sudden onset, rush, and the symptoms can be violent and intense. Now, on the other side, it might be that you were just in a car accident and all of the feelings. It is the shock, the panic, the fright, the sudden onset. It's a brilliant remedy. Also think panic attacks, right? Sudden onset. Aconite is one of the best remedies for an acute panic attack. So that's all of that essence in there. Arnica, our most famous remedy for the physical traumas, right? If you're in a car accident and you get the whiplash, you're taking arnica. A lot of our football teams in Europe, they take arnica constantly because they are training and they're in, I forget if you guys I think you guys call it football, we call it soccer. But I'm thinking of all the teams that I've seen take the homeopathics, and I think it's soccer, Aussie wise, and because they're running, and even for the delayed onset muscle soreness, they have pushed themselves to absolute exertion of the muscles. Arnica is brilliant. When someone rolls their ankle in a netball game, and they roll their ankle, and then the classic response with arnica is, I'm fine, don't touch me, I'm fine. And they're not fine, like the ankle's clearly red and swollen, but it's there in their shock and they don't want anyone to touch it. That's a clear arnica picture. You give the arnica and it will support that healing process while they're going through it. Belladonna. Belladonna is a bit of a chaser, I think, to aconite. They've got a lot of similar characteristics, but aconite, think in the very beginning stages, and then it might move into a bit of a belladonna picture, but it's still sudden intensity, comes on quick, often a red face. They can have throbbing pains, fevers. Belladonna, the essence of it, you want to think first signs of inflammation again, redness, swelling, heat, intensity, right? Belladonna for all those. So even if it's an ear infection, if you see redness, swelling, throbbing like pains, think belladonna. We're not thinking about it for like pus formation and infection. We're thinking first stages of inflammation. The same goes for, like, let's say tonsillitis. You look in the back of the throat, you get your little phone out, use a torchlight, and it is red, it is swollen, it is puffy, and it's really sore. Think belladonna. But by the time it starts moving to more pussy type things, you might think more like pulsatilla, hepa, sulf, these sorts of things. Then we've got pulsatilla here. Now, a keynote of pulsatilla is sometimes that the symptoms are really changeable. They're not really set. They seem to be switching around a bit. The child might be really weepy, or you might feel really weepy. You might feel clingy. Better for fresh air, better for consolation. A pulsatilla kid might want to be cuddled and like held and like, mummy, like, oh, I really don't feel well. And they just want all the snuggles. They're better for consolation and talking through. You compare that to our bryonia in the kit, their absolute MO is like, I'm sick, leave me alone, don't touch me, just leave me in my room. They can be a bit more cranky, but your pulsatilla is definitely your weepy, clingy little child. Now, I'll just tell you a little funny thing about pulsatilla. When they are born, even when they're not sick, a child who is in your classical sort of pulsatilla polycrest picture, when we're talking the chronic pulsatilla, they are very clingy. They often want to be with mum. They're the kids who is playing in the lounge room only if mum is like right there in the lounge room too. As soon as mum needs to go to the toilet, they're up, they're walking to the toilet and they're like, where are you going? What are you doing? And why are you leaving me? They very much never want to be separated, and they need to sort of keep an eye on the person. Now, while that sounds like really cute, I have a lot of parents who consult with me and they're like, oh my gosh, it's so draining. Like, I can't even go to the toilet. If, they can't see my leg while I'm in the kitchen trying to cook dinner, it's like a whole ordeal. And they give pulsatilla, and the child completely relaxes their nervous system, because the core delusion of your classical pulsatilla is that I'm going to be abandoned. You're going to leave me, you're going to abandon me. And so that's why they're so clingy and they want all of this consolation. Now, what's funny is that the best homeopathic remedy to flip a breech baby, so a breech baby is sitting up the wrong way in the womb. We want them head down, ready for birth. But our pulsatilla breech babies, their head is up. And I find it funny because it's almost like, and when you give pulsatilla, notoriously the bub flips around really quick. And it made me think, why is it that the pulsatilla can flip a breech bub? And I wonder if it's that they are so clingy to the mum, they don't even want to get out of the womb. They're like, no, I want to stay right here. I'm not going anywhere. And then they take that pulsatilla, and mum takes it, and then it obviously flows through the whole vibration with the baby. And then bubs flip within 24 hours. This just happens all the time. I get so many people message me about it. And so I think it's that the bub then feels safe. You're not going to abandon me. It's safe to be born and you'll still look after me. So funny little thing to know about pulsatilla there. But yes, the children's temperament completely changes when you give them this remedy. Now, sepia. I have added it into my kits because I believe it's not really technically first aid. It's borderline chronic, but I've put it in there because it's such a situational use that so many mums postpartum fall into a sepia state. So many. It's the number one postpartum remedy. And since there are so many mums who buy my kits, I wanted to put something in there that can support us too. Now, I was seeing a homeopath after each of my children were born, and I got a different remedy each time. One of them was sepia one time. And it is the most beautiful hormone recalibrating. And so think sepia, we are hormonally often out. We're exhausted. We can be irritable. They can feel like, oh my gosh, I just want to escape. I just need a breather. Now, your typical sepia is doing the same jobs day in, day out. And she's just like, it's all the mundane, right? I'm over it. All I do is, well, I had 3 boys aged 3 and under at the time. And it's like, oh my gosh, all I do is like cook, clean, wash, da, da, da. And you can get in this sort of bit negative mindset. Now, a lot of sepia patients, they're off their husbands. The women, they're like, oh, don't come near me. Don't touch me, I'm irritable. And the mum, even though she doesn't want to go out for a drive on her own, she does want space, so it's this feeling of like, I want to be here, but I'm also just so tapped out. And sepia brings them back into alignment beautifully. So that remedy is in the kit. And the other one that's along the same vein, it's really technically a chronic remedy, but I also know how many women are struggling with things like birth trauma or like resentment. So what I would say is that sepia is the number one marriage repairing remedy, because someone, I was overseeing one of my student cases a couple of days ago, and they said they'd prescribed sepia to the patient, and the patient came back 6 weeks later and said, oh my God, it's so funny. I actually like my husband again. And it is true that sepia would be the number one marriage repairer. But the Staphysagria, we need to be really aware that this can be our biggest bust up remedy, where people might have a big blow up or fight. Now, the reason for that is because our Staphysagrians often have a lot of suppressed emotions. They can have indignation. They can feel at one point in their life that they were humiliated, violated. So you can see where this fits into our birth trauma presentation. If a woman feels like during birth, her birth was violated, she felt violated. Let's do a mock situation. So she goes in, they force her into a C-section. Everything goes badly. Her body's cut open, and then she's just left afterwards feeling absolutely devastated, feels like the doctor forced her. This can manifest in such a distortion of energy because of that trauma, that she can start to manifest very specific symptoms postpartum, a lot of which is going to look like postpartum depression or rage, but the incident is what has caused it. And so if we help her heal and move that energy out, she will be able to relax and the anger will be gone. But this is where I come back to in homeopathy. with the distorted energy, a lot of the times it does have to come up and out. So if a woman takes Staphysagria, not being mindful of why she is taking it, it is possible that she is going to blast that anger right out of her mouth at her family, at her husband, at people who don't deserve it. Because let's remember, we're angry at the doctor who violated us and forced us into a medical procedure that we weren't ready for, and people can get stuck in that energy. So be mindful that these remedies are powerful, and Staphysagria is my one that comes with a warning that you will be left in a much better state after, but it does have to come out. So we need to channel it in ways that are really productive. Things like maybe boxing, go for a walk, scream in the car when you're alone, rather than taking it out on the people that we love who don't deserve it. Now I've put these in here. Now I know that we're going to send this recording out to everybody, so you can pause it, you can read through, but this is me going into more detail of those remedies that we have just chat on, and just shows you how deep each of these remedies can go. And like I said, you will find a plethora of information online about homeopathy. And the beauty of homeopathy is that what you read in each book, whilst the wording might be slightly different, we are all saying the same things, because homeopathy, unlike modern medicine, we don't constantly change our opinion about what's good and what's bad and when should take what. I mean, to be honest, even naturopathic standards change probably constantly about, okay, well, how much vitamin D should we be recommending? How much vitamin C is optimal? I feel like all of those rules in those systems, they are open to change. So it really matters what source you're listening to. But with homeopathy, I would say everything that I read online is pretty much bang on, because we are all coming from the same data. The way that we use remedies today is the same today, yesterday, 200 years ago. What Hahnemann said about belladonna, we still say about belladonna today, because the truth doesn't change. I'll let you say that. Staphysagria, going through there. All right, when do we change remedies if we're in a first aid situation? You need to change your prescription whenever the symptom picture changes. So a good example is during COVID of the last couple of years. A lot of people would reach out and say, I have a kit. What remedy is best to support through these symptoms? And the answer is, so many experienced whatever COVID was very differently. Some people had these deep bone aches and it was very fluid. They had a lot of malaise. It was like a slow onset and then they're in bed. So remedies, for example, like gelsemium might have been most helpful for them, maybe Bellis perennis for the deep bone pains. Some people had this sort of like sore throat, really restless anxiety, maybe some burning, some wheezing or something. Maybe Arsenicum album might have fit them better. Some people had the full cough and respiratory things and they're bracing their chest every time they cough. Bryonia might have been more helpful. But also, it depends how that flu actually manifests in different stages, because you might start in the initial stages of an illness. You might pick a remedy and support those symptoms through, and you might move through that quite quickly. Okay, but now it's progressed from the sore throat to the cough. When it progresses and the symptoms change, we need to reevaluate what homeopathic remedy will be best in this instance. So then you pivot your prescription and then you change that remedy. Now, is it possible to put a couple of remedies in as a combination? Yes, it sure is. In homeopathy, we would call this a complex or a combination remedy. So you can put a few different remedies in, shake it up, and your body will receive that frequency. It's so beautiful the ways that you can add it to the water and it doesn't seem to mishmash or confuse the frequency. Homeopaths around the world have long been using these complexes. Even there's a famous combination remedy called ABC, and it is aconite, belladonna, chamomilla. And so many practitioners recommend just have an ABC blend on hand for any of those, and they will give it, okay, your child's teething, ABC. You've got an ear infection, ABC. You've got a sore throat, ABC, because they're working on all of those first stage inflammation processes. And with chamomilla added in there, our number one teething remedy, it's really good for that pain, the irritability, the crankiness that comes when kids are out of sorts because they're in pain. So you can absolutely experiment and make up your own complex remedies. But I would say, you know, as a homeopath, if you can find one remedy that fits best, give the one remedy. I'm a lover of the single prescription if and when possible, but I'm not averse to people making combinations, absolutely. So we want to observe the changes that happen when we start giving the remedy. And if there's improvement, brilliant, you can continue until there's, you know, it's really slowing down and you don't need to take it anymore. If it plateaus, you might need to either up your doses, take more doses, or move on to a new remedy. And if there are new symptoms, let that be your guiding signpost. Go back to your reference booklet and now find the best fitting remedy that you can. All right. So some examples of when you might change. Maybe it starts after cold, dry wind and we start on taking aconite, but then it progresses through and that night we've got flushed face, hot skin, throbbing pain, and we move to belladonna. Brilliant. We might have had a dry tickling cough, which we gave bryonia. And then after dosing, it actually comes with this thick yellow mucus and we might use Hepar sulf to support that next area of healing. We might start with arnica if we have an injury, bruising, and then let's say we're in a car accident, we got all this bruising. So we start taking the arnica, all the bruising's healing, but then we've got some deeper nerve pain. So we move to hypericum. Brilliant. That's how homeopathy works. Homeopathy has been supporting health for over 200 years. Today, we are witnessing the great resurgence because families are seeking safe, natural, and truly empowering ways to care for themselves and their families. We are realizing just how important it is. Acute prescribing shows us how we can respond confidently in the moment. You don't want to be caught out without a kit in the midst of an acute. That's why having kits at home, because with the acutes, they're often quite a rapid onset. You don't always have time to track down a homeopath, do an appointment, and then go and get the remedy. It's sort of too, oh my gosh, in that moment. So don't be afraid of using conventional medicine if and when you need it. I'm never about the fear mongering and like, oh, it's this or this. My dad is a medical doctor. I've got a really healthy respect for conventional medicine. I love that we have it. And I would ask you guys, don't get so fearful of using a conventional option that it causes undue stress to your vital force. I've seen people try and hold so tight to doing everything holistically and everything perfectly that it actually becomes detrimental to their health overall. Guys, let go of all the fears. You know, use conventional medicine if and when you need it, but I guarantee you, if you get familiar with homeopathy, if you are using this as your first line of defense, your chances of needing that medicine is going to be so far decreased. And that's where we bolster the health of generations to come. We are not going to be able to undo all the damage overnight in one generation. This is probably going to take 3, 4, 5 generations of people raising their children holistically and us doing classical homeopathy, you know, even as adults, that we start to heal ourselves to a point where we're not even inflicting the levels of trauma that we actually have seen come down generations. All of this suppression, all of the people who've got hardcore addictions to substances or behaviors that don't serve us. Let's be honest, guys, these adaptations are because largely people are sad, they're not coping, they've got such dysfunctional energy flowing throughout their body. When we heal that with homeopathy, we allow ourselves to actually heal the future generations. So it is multifaceted, you know, and you're not going to solve the world's problems only with the first aid kit, I wish, but it is the start. Having a homeopathic first aid kit in every single home, in my opinion, it should be given to people. It should be a government funded gift to every household. If we actually cared about the well-being of our nations, of our people, and that we are actually here to thrive, that it would be. But until the government catches up or starts to care, we must take matters into our own hands. It is the best, you know, baby shower gift that you could ever give somebody, really supporting their family in a wholesome way. Okay, guys, I think I am to the end of all the information I need to share. I'm now going to do some Q&A. So let me pull up the chat. Now, if you need to leave, guys, please feel free to go. We will go through these questions and you can go through in the recording. Okay. Let me see how many questions I can get to. All right. My daughter has bad endometriosis. She has had 2 operations. What remedy would you recommend for her? So Terry, for this, you would need to sit down with a homeopath because there are very specific different remedies. But there would be, if I was to show you the chapter in here on endometriosis in this book, it would have about 100 remedies listed that could fit your daughter. So my job is to figure out which one is it that really matches her vital force, her very unique situation, her life, what it was like growing up. I would be asking your daughter, does your mum, does your grandmother have endometriosis? Do either of them have cancer? Is there a family history of things like breast cancer, mononucleosis, Epstein-Barr virus? All of these things are sort of red flags to a homeopath of what we need to put into our prescription to heal the endometriosis. So many times I have done this with all different remedies, but it must match the patient, because if I was to give your daughter the remedies that suited my last patient, it might do nothing, because if it doesn't get the resonance, her body will not respond and it will not heal itself. So we need to factor all of those in. Okay, so we've got a few people saying their dreams and their emotions have been wild when taking homeopathic remedies. This is a very good sign to the homeopath and to the patient that your remedies, that frequency, it is interacting with your vital force. And so the dreams are just that sign that something has been awakened, healing is coming, let it unfold. But it's very common. I would say in about nearly 50% of patients, if they are given the well-indicated remedy at the right potency. Potency is important too, guys. It's not just about finding the right remedy. It is about getting the right strength, the right potency. So whether it's a C, whether it's an M. Anyway, it's a bit advanced, but that is important. But the energetics of that will get your mind flowing. The amount of epiphanies that people have and what it looks like, guys, when you're treating people chronically for classically for chronic issues, they say, it's so weird. I've been thinking so much about my dad lately and like how he used to treat me as a child. And I can really see, actually, my dad was actually really beautiful, but me in my innocence as a little child, I felt like it was really critical. And that's why I think I developed this eating disorder and this, secret drug habit, or why I got addicted to going to the gym, or blah, 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 whatever it is, guys. It's these beautiful little epiphanies that actually unlock the healing, because then your vital force lets go of the stress. And so the disease processes start to relinquish. Do the energetics flow through the breastfeeding mothers to the babies? I do recommend, so say for example, if we have a baby with colic, I had a friend when I was studying homeopathy and she was a police officer actually, and her baby had such severe colic, she would just scream, writhing in pain, lifting her knees up, trying to get that pressure on it. She was a 6-week-old little bub and she would just scream for hours every day. And my friend got from the homeopathic pharmacy a bottle of colocynthis and put a little drop in the mouth. And she said it was the most outrageous thing. The babe just stopped crying within a couple of minutes and was just happy. And she was like, oh my gosh, what on earth is this? So she quit being a police officer and came to study homeopathy for 2 years. And I would say that, in that instance, could the mother have just taken the colocynthis? Maybe it would have had some effect on the baby, but not as profound as if we give that bub one little drop. So if the mum, it is true that sometimes our mums can be in such an energetic state that it can influence our children. So the bubs with colic, more often than not, but not always, I generalize a lot as a homeopath, guys, don't take anything offensively, it's just a generalization. But a lot of the bubs with colic and these reflux issues might have, for example, a highly strung mum. Mum might have had a traumatic birth, so her anxiety, she's on edge, and bubbers can feel this because mums and babies, we are so energetically linked, more than anyone else, mums and their babies. So your thought process as a mum is going to influence the vital force of your baby. So I would say to our mums, be mindful of how we're feeling. If we've got birth trauma, let's get rid of it, because you can see in babies sometimes, let's say they have premature rotting of their teeth, lots of dental decay. Now, one of the most famous remedies for that is Staphysagria. Now, when you take the cases of these children with this rotting teeth for no reason, mums say, but they were breastfed and they're eating so well. I don't understand why their teeth are like this. But you go back and mum's birth was highly, highly traumatic, and mum was in a Staphysagrian state, very resentful, very angry. And here she is breastfeeding her baby for the next year, almost sharing this field, right? Where our fields talk to each other. I'm sure you guys realize that. When you think about the ways in which our bodies communicate, guys, think about women who work together, right? I work with 10 women in an office. You know, I'm not actually there very often, but they work together. And think about how the menstrual cycles sync up, because our bodies are communicating even about where we are at different stages of our cycles. So imagine how much your vital force is communicating with your baby after you've just grown them. You have shared your vital force. Rudolf Steiner says that, you know, babies aren't fully incarnated until they are 7 years old. Up until that point, their energy is very susceptible to mum and dad's. So that to some people sounds wonderful. To some people that's horrifying, because being a parent is exhausting. It's trying, it's taxing. We are the most underslept and perhaps not acting our absolute best. Vital forces are very forgiving. But what I would say is, guys, we just want to be mindful of our energy. And homeopathy helps us overcome the things that we're struggling with. And it helps our children overcome the things that they have inherited, because all of us have inherited some energetic baggage coming down family lines. Don't feel bad about it. That's the last thing you want to do. We get a lot of grace as human beings, and homeopathy offers us more grace than ever. And this is why I say it's God's gift to help us overcome the things that we've been through, the toxic things that we've done. All right, I'll leave that there. So I do recommend, Mel, dosing the babies as well as the mums. How often would you dose with sepia if it's a postpartum situation? I would do that once daily. I wouldn't rapid dose that one because it's a bit of a more chronic situation. And the same goes for birth trauma. Your sepia and Staphysagria, I believe that they are better suited to single doses. So put it in your water and just take one dose, maybe 2 a day, but I wouldn't rapid dose it. Nick said, I'm taking it. I love it. Being a former emergency service worker, all trauma is repressed. I bet. I'm so glad that's working for you, by the way, Nick. Is it safe to try several different remedies on our children from chronic issues like eczema and then see if they produce healing? Whilst you could, I would give you a strong warning that eczema is one of the most finicky, difficult things to completely cure. It happens all the time, but depending on the nature of the eczema, a lot of parents have also at one point, out of desperation, used steroid creams. And when we give the well-indicated homeopathic remedy, it undoes all of that steroidal suppression. So what happens is it looks like the eczema gets worse initially. And a lot of parents are like, oh my gosh, no, they took their first dose and look at them, you know, the next day. So we have to be very delicate with eczema. So I would highly recommend seeing a homeopath. I've got no issues with parents researching and trying to be their own best healer. And, you know, I completely support people. I'm not someone who says like, you must see a homeopath for everything under the sun and trying to keep the power in certain people's hands. I'm not like that. But I am honest that eczema is the last thing I would want to treat at home. And yeah, it's very delicate. You can have big return of old symptoms. When people are healing, we have a very specific, direction of cure, what that can look like. So even, for example, a lot of children who suppressed their eczema, they end up with asthma. So you have the eczema on the skin, you take a corticosteroid, you put that on the skin, and then the parents go, yes, I cured the eczema. But then the child starts to develop asthma and you're like, oh, damn. Okay, back to the doctor. Now we're on a Ventolin puffer. And you can suppress your asthma so much that you actually end up with mental issues, as in things like ADHD. We can be cognitively having issues then. And it is because your vital force, the beautiful human organism, had that eczema for a reason. It was showing you that your body was out of balance. You've either inherited something out of balance, or you've injected something toxic or orally taken something, and it has triggered this big response. Something's not right in the body if we've got eczema. But when we suppress the organism's means of expressing itself, it drives deeper. Because eczema is actually more superficial and a safer disease process than asthma. Eczema doesn't kill people. Asthma, unfortunately, many people die in Australia from asthma attacks. So your vital force then, when you go to the homeopath and you say, I would like to heal my asthma, they're going to take your whole case. They're going to give you a well-indicated remedy. Now, it's important to note that homeopaths, we have over thousands of remedies at our disposal. In reality, I only really use routinely about 100 of those remedies, but there are many that it could be that we need to heal your asthma. But when you start taking the asthma, what do you guys think is going to happen to the eczema? It is going to come back onto the skin. This is the direction of cure. We must heal the eczema, and in that stimulating the lungs to heal, it's going to push it back out onto the skin. Think about it, guys, right? You look at your superficial skin on the outside. If you follow through where the air actually that we breathe through to our lungs, it really is like our internal skin. It's still aligning inside the body. So when you heal that, it comes back out onto the skin. The direction of cure, I would say just be mindful of it. And eczema, I would see a homeopath. Asthma, all chronic things, I would tend to go and see a homeopath. You're going to get the best healing and not stir things up like unnecessarily. Would you consider taking sepia for the exhausted, irritable postpartum mum and acute or chronic? So this is where I say it's a bit of a bridge, because it can be self-resolving, right? Like usually the postpartum irritable mum, she does grow out of it, but on its own, that might take 7 years for her to fall back in love with her husband and want to be really romantic and intimate and obsessed with being a mum and loving all that element. So 7 years is a very long acute situation, even if it is self-resolving. I love helping mums through it quicker. So it's a bit of a in-between. How well does the anxiety remedy work to clear past ancestral anxiety and depression? These things, I would say, are deeper rooted. If you have chronic anxiety or chronic depression, you want to see a homeopath, because they are probably, a lot of it is generational, or it's going to be trauma related, a very big, significant trauma that has allowed this depression to fester. And your anxiety blend is made to be acute. So your anxiety blend in this kit does not contain remedies like carcinosin, one of my biggest remedies for anxiety, or syphilinum, one of my biggest remedies for deep, dark depression. And so much that comes with this. Sorry, guys, I know I'm in a first aid Q&A, but I could talk at length on these ones. We should have another Zoom just to chat all the chronic things. If you are extremely interested in these all are covered in our Welcome to the Revolution 6-module short course. So that's, I don't know if it's like 15 hours of content where we talk about the syphiline and the carcinosis and what that looks like, and it coming down family lines. We also talk in that one, we do homeoprophylaxis, which is preventing infectious diseases with homeopathy, vaccine detox. Sarah Valentini talks about ADHD, autism, PANS, PANDAS, all of the chronic complex children's stuff. I do the first aid 30 remedies, so I talk through them all at length. Who else was in that one? We talk about the classical prescriptions for children. So Jan Blair and Jean Duckworth go through, so this one here, if you can't see, chronic children's issues. So you look at lycopodium, calc carb children, chamomilla children, all of that. And then we go through the adult presentations. So what does a sulfur man look like? What does a Nux Vom man look like, or a man? So you guys can learn what they look like. Okay, do we have a date for the next remedy Q&A? I wonder, Robin, if you mean our 2-year academy rather than like this acute Q&A. I don't know the date of the next one. We do have all the current recordings on our YouTube, RMDY Academy. So you can see the old ones, but I'm not sure when the next one is, sorry, but it won't be more than a couple of months. Is it possible to do things wrong in a harmful sense? All right, great question. Essentially, if you give a first aid remedy, it is either going to resonate or it's going to do nothing. Now, in my opinion, 99% of people taking a remedy and it causing some resonance and like stirring a healing response, that is positive. I sort of take the line that the homeopathic remedies can only get resonance if there is already something there for the body to stimulate. However, there is a thing in homeopathic medicine where you can have what's called provings. Now, only a very small percentage of people are susceptible to it. And what I would not advise is taking remedies for no reason for extended periods of time. Homeopathy is not like a multivitamin, say, that you just buy at the store and you think, oh, I just want to take this as a little top up to feel good, because they are still powerful energetic signatures that if you are taking an energy to your body unnecessarily for like 6 months, it's just not going to be a good idea. Do I actually think that it could ever force your body to do something harmful? No. I think it could like be a bit of an annoying resonance and maybe you could start to feel some of the symptoms of it. But you just don't see that in first aid prescribing. Not when people, look at the reference book and they've got the symptoms and they're trying to match it and they give it. It's just not something that we see. And I've surveyed so many homeopaths about this. I'm curious in even the professional homeopaths when they're in clinic. I say, how often do you give a remedy and the patient actually proves it? And the great majority of them are like, never. It just never really happens. But we know that it is possible. So we don't recommend taking remedies for no reason. Take it when there are symptoms and stop taking the remedies when there are no symptoms there that resonate. A hyperactive 3-year-old boy. So hyperactivity is likely to be a more chronic issue. So it also depends, like how hyperactive are we talking, because 3-year-old boys, I think, do have a lot of energy to burn, and it's best when they are outside and not in a setting where they can't run around. But there is definitely remedies, ones that you can look up. Tuberculinum, tarantula. These are 2 brilliant remedies renowned for hyperactivity that you could read up on and see if they fit the picture. Do you have a bunch of remedies to give newborns in replacement of all the newborn jabs they are meant to receive and or to help them with getting ill? Dr. Isaac Golden, he did his thesis for his PhD on homeoprophylaxis. You could look him up. So he is in our Welcome to the Revolution course teaching there. But if you look up his website, it is Hom Study. And let me just see if I can get his email address. I'll type his email address in there for anybody who would like to contact him if you would like an appointment there. So it is homstudy@bigpond.com. Homstudy@bigpond.com. He is a beautiful, beautiful man, Dr. Isaac Golden there. Now, he is not legally allowed to advertise for those services. You can imagine why, the political climate, but I believe I'm allowed to give you his email address. And I'm also, you guys can obviously see the Welcome to the Revolution modules where he talks about his history, his work in Cuba, because homeoprophylaxis has been huge around the world. Millions of people have received homeoprophylaxis to prevent infectious diseases. The governments do it in some countries. In Australia, America, the Western world, absolutely not. It is way too cost effective and a big political thing. So there you go. Is there a remedy for the recurring pain and swelling years after a snake bite? You could definitely try something like hypericum. If it's nervy, you could try ledum would be a good one. So this is puncture wounds, bites, insects. Ledum is in your kit you could use as well. So try those, Leanne. Is it possible to buy the first aid booklet? We give that for free. So you guys can go onto our website, I believe, and you can download it. Or it's in our private Facebook group that you guys can join and just download it there. And I believe we also send you a copy. When people do purchase their kits, I believe we also send an electronic copy as well, so you can save that one. Do you think that homeopathy can help the fatigue from long COVID? Absolutely. It's something we see in clinic all the time. Very, very effective. Remedies that I use a lot are things like carcinosin, sometimes the COVID nosode, and sometimes we need to detox from other things associated with COVID. It's so hard to find a good homeopath for complex cases. I'm trying to figure out how to treat my son for urethral narrowing and stricture. I want to hit hard due to post-surgery scarring. Hard to know what to do. Definitely, Donna, I do agree with you. There are not enough homeopaths around and who are practicing in ways that are getting really, really good results. We do have 500 plus homeopaths coming through our academy right now, and the results they are getting in their student cases are phenomenal. So it's up to you. You know, you guys can apply to have one of our students see you, although I know there are a lot of people on that list already. Googling homeopaths in your local area, doing discovery calls is a great thing. You know, say, do you offer a 10-minute discovery call so we can talk about my condition and I can see if I believe that you're a really good fit for my family, is a good thing to do as well. With the headache blend, does it work better with the varied remedies all in one than using individual? If you found one individual remedy that really fit your symptoms exactly, let's say like a Nux Vom headache, I would just do the Nux Vom. But a lot of people use that headache blend and love it. And frankly, I've put Nux Vom in that headache blend. So if you are a Nux Vom, it will work. I like the blends for headaches because sometimes, and same with coughs. Now, why would we do a blend? I was talking to my friend Kim Parry, who's a homeopath, and she used to do just acute consults for cough. But what was so annoying is the parents would call up and say, okay, it's this sort of cough. And it was just this constant back and forth. All right, now there's a bit of mucus. Kim's like, all right, change the remedy to this. And when you put them all in one blend, it just works phenomenally. So why not just start with the blend at the outset and continue that along? G6PD. I am not sure off the top of my head. Can you tell me the clinical name for what G6PD is? Asking for a friend who has possible thyroid hormone imbalance and insulin, can homeopathy help? Absolutely, yes. 5-year-old with ADHD and night terrors that last for an hour most nights and has trust issues with males. 100%, Hannah. Yes, we can. Remedies that you will want to research. You will need to see a homeopath for the syphilinum, but remedies like syphilinum, stramonium is huge in children with night terrors, and it is the most phenomenal thing to see. If you treat this, Hannah, and it goes away, usually it's very quick that it goes away, but send me a message because the number of people I have worked with who in energy remedies like stramonium, and it's that they've got this terror and fear. You relax the vital force, and these children, you don't even tell the 5-year-old what you're giving them or why. You put that in the water bottle and you'll see that they just will not wake up because their vital force has been recalibrated. But yes, that's a very common thing in homeopathic practice that we see. The best anti-inflammatory remedy in overactive nervous system. This is going to be a classical prescription, Terry. You've got to really find out what's going on with the overactive nervous system. What's the source of it? Why? Was it volatile parents? Was it abuse? You know, what's going on down family lines? Can treating a parent with homeopathy help their children too? You bet it can. Because, you know, our fields, we're in the same house. And also, it's something about quantum physics, right? Like the energy that made our children flows through me. Like my energy literally knit together my children. So we are connected for the rest of our lives. If I was to take a remedy and I was to heal myself and to heal some of my own ancestral trauma, of course that benefits and breaks that load off my children. The healing can flow up to our parents actually, and it can also flow down this timeline of family that connects us. And it's a really fascinating thing to see in homeopathic practice when you start treating you know, either a grandparent or a grandchild, and you see the healing flow up and down physically, mentally, and emotionally. It's outrageous. It bends your perception of reality, what you see homeopathy can do, because you're like, oh my goodness, energy really does. It is the center of creation of this universe. God knit it together with everything. Energy is what connects us. And so, yes, healing yourself can definitely influence those around you. Same goes for husbands and wives. We are intimately connected, husbands and wives. So when a wife heals herself, the husband comes along too, and vice versa. So highly recommend. Yes, there are remedies where people see immense sugar cravings. So again, we want to find out why. So a lot of times trauma is actually a reason for poor blood sugar metabolism. So people with PCOS, for example, who are renowned to have poor blood sugar levels, and even diabetes, these sorts of things, there's often a trauma link. So we want to address what and why. Remedies like arginine, remedies like lycopodium have intense sugar cravings, even sulfur, but you want to find out the exact match. My daughter is neurodiverse and has non-epileptic seizures and trauma, and it has changed our lives using homeopathy. I love homeopathy. I also treat myself so I can be the best version of myself. Oh, I love that, Nick. I have a beautiful nephew who is 6.